Hello dear friends, and welcome to the Ruslan Belov channel. Even Sursky started to panic yesterday, stating that Russian forces had launched an offensive in the Zaparisia direction. Meanwhile, the German outlet Bild released statistics for the past week, from Sunday to Saturday, and the numbers are completely discouraging for Kiev. In just 1 week, 200 square kilometers came under our control. And get this, 18 settlements were taken. Tell me, for those of you who follow the reports regularly, when was the last time we saw such a pace? When was the last time we saw figures like this? Nearly 20 settlements taken in just a week. I can't recall such a case. Maybe only back in the spring of 2022, and that's it. Since then, we haven't seen numbers like this. At the same time, Sursky is rambling about the Zaparisia direction, even though nothing significant is actually happening there. But where they are truly collapsing is in the Sumy region. So let's move there now. Take a look at this. See this line? That's the line of contact 24 hours ago. The front line as of the morning of May 31st. And this is where the front line stands now on the morning of June 1st. The most powerful advance happened in the Vladimirovka-Alexievka sector. Our assault units made a stunning 6-kilometer push there. To put it in perspective, Vladimirovka itself came under our control just a few days ago, and now the front has already moved beyond the outskirts of Alexievka. It's incredible. We've never seen such momentum in the Sumy region before. Just yesterday, I talked in a video about the objectives for next week in the Sumy region, to straighten the front line along the Konstantinovka-Lochnia axis and take control of Vodolagi village. Well, that objective is now nearly complete, and in some places even exceeded. Vodolagi village is already under our control. Yesterday, Russian assault troops pushed the Ukrainian forces out of the southern part of the village. The fighting was fierce. Now, with the success at Alexievka and the surrounding area, the focus will shift to clearing out the Alexievka-Yunakivka pocket. So the next week's goals will be the villages of Novonikolayevka, Vorochena and Yablonevka. Also, don't forget about the western sector. There were advances there as well yesterday, not as significant in scale, but progress nonetheless. Our forces managed to push 1 kilometer forward from Konstantinovka, reaching the northern outskirts of Kondratovka village. I know many are wondering, what about Sumy city itself? What are the prospects for an offensive on the city, and how close are we to that goal? Well, I'll tell you this, we're closer than we were just 4 to 5 days ago. Let me break it down for you with numbers. Thanks to the 6-kilometer advance near Alexievka, the direct distance to Sumy is now only 19 kilometers. Just a week ago, it was 27 kilometers from the same position to the regional center. So yeah, 19 kilometers sounds a lot more promising than 27, right? And to give you an idea, in just the past 24 hours, the area of territory that came under our control in the Sumy region alone was 24 square kilometers, to be precise, 24.3. If we count the total distance left to Sumy across this zone, it's about 600 square kilometers. At yesterday's pace, we could theoretically reach the city by the end of June. Of course, you can't calculate it that way. The pace changes day by day. Some days there's no progress at all. Other days it's 20 square kilometers. But I'm sharing these numbers not to predict exact dates, but to make one thing clear. Sumy is getting close, just a few more kilometers, and our FPV drones will be able to operate freely over the city. Let me also remind you about Zelensky's statement from last September. Take a look. He said there was no threat of a Russian offensive on Sumy thanks to, and I quote, the Ukrainian Kursk operation. Well, I'd love to ask him now, how's that Kursk operation going? Still no threat to Sumy? Then why have 200 settlements already been evacuated from the Sumy region? And I'll say even more, give it another month, and we may not be talking about evacuating villages, but Sumy city itself. We'll see how it plays out. For now, it's clear that the Ukrainian General Staff is overstretched, and unless they redeploy reserves to the Sumy region, advances of 20 square kilometers per day could become the norm, and by midsummer we could truly reach the outskirts of Sumy. But if they do move reserves here and manage to slow or stop the advance, then they'll obviously have to weaken another part of the front. And that's where the next collapse will come, whether it's Kupiansk, Lyman, or Konstantinovka again. Also, today we received very interesting footage from the Russian-Ukrainian border area near Krolovets. In this video, we see preparations underway to launch long-range Ukrainian drones against Russian territory. A cluster munition hits the area, striking a wide zone, including drone operators, vehicles, and the drones themselves. And just north of Voronezh, we received similar footage, but in this case, it's specifically Ukrainian drone operators. The strike also successfully hits the target. It looks like Russian forces have begun a serious hunt for Ukrainian long-range drone teams. All of them are launching from this forested region, and tracking them down is no easy task. Finally, we turn to Kharkiv region, where a reconnaissance UAV spotted a well-fortified position at an airfield, home to a major command post for Ukrainian drones. Shortly after, an Iskander missile strike was carried out. After the recent nighttime strikes on the airfield and the significant personnel losses, the Ukrainian armed forces decided to return to their fortified positions to conduct nighttime UAV launches into Russian territory. However, as we can see, their plans were not destined to come true, since a missile with an airburst warhead accurately struck the target, effectively destroying the entire command post. Let's move on. Yesterday, the main sectors of the front were relatively quiet. Good results were recorded only in one area, at the junction of Donetsk and Zaparisia regions. But let's start with the Donetsk area. As I mentioned in yesterday's update, after our push toward Delievka, the next objective was to clear the newly formed pocket. As you can see, that task has slowly begun. The advance was modest, just 530 meters. But we must remember that every meter gained is not a walk in the park. It's a risk to the lives of our fighters. Sometimes I read comments, and it seems like some people don't understand this and turn up their noses at gains of 1 or 2 kilometers. Yet just 2 months ago, a 2-kilometer push was a rare feat. Now we've gotten used to seeing advances of 4 to 5 kilometers, and people scoff at gains of 500 meters or a kilometer. People call it just a tactical improvement in position, but behind this tactical improvement is the hard work of our guys. Let's not forget that. Also, yesterday we finally entered Alexeyevka. Not the one in Sumy, although yes, we entered the Sumy Alexeyevka too and fully took control of it. But this is about Donetsk Alexeyevka. We entered the eastern outskirts of the village and took control of 2 streets, Sadovaya and Zelyonaya. The advance within the village itself was 300 meters. So we officially mark May 31st as the beginning of the battle for Alexeyevka, the last major village before Novopavlovka. As you can see, there are no other large settlements between here and Novopavlovka. That means it won't be easy. The Ukrainian forces will likely try to turn it into another fortress, because the loss of this village threatens to collapse a large section of the front line. Now the most impressive advance yesterday took place in the Huliai direction. There, we moved forward by 4 kilometers, took control of the village of Novopil, and the total area that came under our control amounted to 10 square kilometers. Actually 10.2 square kilometers to be precise. What are the prospects here? Next are the battles for another fortified Ukrainian position, Temirivka. This is the last village in this sector, and like Zelenoy Pole, it sits on high ground. Once all the elevated settlements are under our control, 2 out of 3 are already ours. Then, after taking Temirivka, we'll begin descending toward Huliai. To summarize, the total area gained in the past 24 hours was 35.5 square kilometers. A strong finish to what has been a good month in terms of territorial gains. Now that's all I have for today regarding the frontline situation. A few words on politics. Our sources report that the United States is beginning to slowly distance itself from the Ukrainian crisis. That's how experts are interpreting the fact that the US does not plan to send a delegation to the Ukraine-Russia talks in Istanbul on June 2nd, as reported by The Atlantic, citing insiders. The Americans are entering a phase of disengagement from the Ukrainian conflict. They believe that the globalists will drag out the negotiation process by pushing inflated, uncompromising demands through Kyiv, while the Kremlin also won't agree to major concessions. Moscow is holding its line. The sanctions issue is currently stalled. The US might impose mutual sanctions on both parties under the pretext of forcing them to peace. But such measures won't work against Russia. If general sanctions are imposed on Russia, then Ukraine will face personal sanctions, specifically targeting Zelensky's inner circle and their assets. By the way, those sanctions would also hit Europe. Energy prices would soar. Western publications already complain that Ukraine is suffering record territorial losses this month. According to the New York Times, in May, the Russian armed forces gained an average of 14 kilometers per day. Most of the new territory lies in Donetsk region, where Russian forces broke through the defenses between Pokrovsk and Toretsk. Moreover, a new front has opened in Sumy region, and around 50,000 Russian troops are reportedly concentrated near Kharkiv. So the situation for the Zelensky regime is deteriorating rapidly day by day. And finally, some more international news concerning Trump, as reported by Yuri Podolyaka. Another blow has struck Trump. This time it came in the form of ingratitude from China, the very country he saved from chaos and economic depression. In his words, 2 weeks ago China was on the verge of economic disaster. The high tariffs Trump had imposed shut China out of the US market. Many Chinese factories shut down. There were, to put it mildly, civil disturbances. Then Trump made a quick deal with China to stop the worsening crisis. Things quickly stabilized. Everyone seemed happy. That's the good news, but here's the bad. China isn't honoring its commitments from that deal. It's hard being the good guy, Trump complained. He was referring to the Geneva talks held in early May, after which he enthusiastically announced a full reboot in US-China relations. But as often happens with Trump, reality didn't match his expectations. It's unclear what exactly he's upset about now, but US Trade Representative Greer has already stated that he sees no increase in rare earth metal exports from China to the US, something supposedly promised in the agreement. Trump wants to reach a favorable deal with China as soon as possible, but Beijing isn't rushing, and that greatly irritates the American president. The current situation is another attempt to pressure China and raise the stakes in the game, but it's unlikely to succeed. After Trump's statement, CNN reported that the US and China are negotiating a phone call between Trump and Xi Jinping to resolve the latest round of trade tensions. The very call Trump has been eagerly waiting for. We can only sympathize with Trump. The man persistently tries to do as much good as possible for the whole world, but some particularly ungrateful nations stubbornly refuse to accept his generosity, a military analyst wrote sarcastically. That's all for today's update. Thanks for watching and staying informed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support the channel. We'll be back soon with more frontline reports and analysis. Stay safe, stay sharp, and as always, victory will be ours. Until next time.